Hello and welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour, the weekly bridge to the future of the piano tech community. I'm David Anderson.
And I'm Ethan Janney. And we're here to ask great questions, and then we'll shut up and listen to some of the authorities, experts, and most outstanding personalities in our little world of pianos.
So, put on your best set of headphones and let's get started.
This is being brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, that online educational resource that brings you piano technicians from all over the world to your home so you can learn. And you can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. And on today's episode, we have Eric Johnson, who is kind of the high-end piano guy. He's worked in the industry for several years for several manufacturers. And he's out there in New York and South Carolina, and we're going to hear about, how his lifestyle is nowadays as a piano technician, as well as the incredible history that he's been through in the industry. So without further ado, here's Eric Johnson. Welcome.
Thanks very much. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. David, you got anything you want to launch off with, or?
Just that I've known Eric on a personal level for 15 years? Probably.
That's great.
Rochester.
We've taught together a couple of times. We loved it. He's one of the most able piano technicians I've ever come across. He's kind of like a prototype X-Man kind of awesome piano technician. He looks good. He knows how to conduct a relationship, and he's got massive artisanal talents to make a piano sing. So welcome. I've wanted you on Piano Tech Radio Hour since the beginning. So
thank you, David. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Let me just say, let me tell you some of the things I like about David. That hair, man. That hair. It's like,
it's almost, my brother says I look like a retired Marine colonel with this buzz.
But listen, but seriously, I mean, this is sort of connected. David and I met at the Rochester PTG convention.
Right. 15 years ago.
Yeah, and he's the first person that I had met in the industry who sort of spoke in spiritual terms about pianos. And I don't mean, ghosts and things, but this idea that there was something beyond just the mechanics of the keys going up and down and the hammer hitting the string, and that there was something beyond the specs. And it was something that I had always felt, but I had never really met anybody who spoke in those kind of terms, or who admitted to thinking in those kind of terms. David was, if you know David, he's right out there. You know exactly what he's thinking at any particular moment. And it was very refreshing to meet somebody else who thought that way, there was, I don't know another word than spiritual. I mean, that captures part of it, but it's, that was a little too ruled, but another dimension to what a piano is. So that was really fun. We've had fun ever since. Do you want me to just start talking, or
just start talking.
All right. Well,
I already did start talking, so you can keep talking.
So I'm open. Do you know Joe Malecki? I do know Joe Malecki. It's going to be a little tricky for me to watch these. Please compare and contrast.
We'll keep an eye on the chat.
Ethan will keep an eye on those.
Okay, these are great questions, and particularly the one, the Schimmel and other German pianos and Steinways. So, but to give you an idea what my perspective is, where I'm coming from, let me share with you a little bit of my background. But in particular window in history in the piano industry. That is, Dave and I were joking, it seems to me like it was yesterday, but it turns out it was 40 years ago. So it's ancient history. A lot of people, but that will, I think, give you my perspective. And then we can talk about, some of these tone differences between American and European pianos, because that is something I'm really focused on. So, secondly, I have no explanation for my career. I was the right person at the right time, willing to work for mostly nothing for a long time. So that's why, but you know, when you hear these things, it's like, I don't have any, the only rational explanation I can have for the way my career has unfolded is reincarnation. I mean, that's the only rational kind of thing. There's something in my karma that led me to this particular industry, and in particular at this point in the industry. And as I tell people, I tried to get out of this business twice, and it has pulled me back in. This is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful profession. It has its quirks, it has its difficulties. It's not, you know, wine and roses, but it's a fabulous profession because it allows you to deal at so many different levels. You can pick and choose. I like the high-end concert level, and I don't like sawdust. So I'm not a rebuilder, and I don't even pretend to be a rebuilder. And people can find their niche in lots of different places. And it's always a good place for people that like cool, expensive tools. So, you know, no matter what your other interests are. So, you know, I'm deeply connected to this industry, and I think part of that will unfold. So anyway, Go ahead.
Can you just give us 30 seconds? You were a piano technician first, and from what I understand, a good one, and then went on this whole piano industry executive detour in a way, right?
Yeah.
Describe that very quickly, 30, 45.
Well, I'm going to take it, if you don't mind, I'll take it a little slower than that. Because there were two chunks to my career. The first chunk was as a tool case carrying concert technician. And I worked for, I was right out of college. I had 2 years of tuning experience under my belt. And right out of college, right out of Berkeley College, I got hired by Kimball, who was the owner of Bösendorfer at that point. And they were starting the Bösendorfer concert program in this country. This is 1978. Garrick Olson was their big marquee name here, and they had a number of names in Europe, Schiff and Paul Badurskota, and a number of people in Europe, and they were beginning to push here. So it took me 2 years sort of with Kimball before I really hit the road, before I trained in Vienna and really got up to speed on concert pianos. And then I spent the next 5 or 6 years traveling the country, basically, supporting mainly Bösendorfer artists. And this was Garrick Olson, Andras Schiff, Paul Badurskota, Oscar Peterson, Chick Corea played Bösendorfer at that point. You know, I mean, it was a small, but there were some serious pianists in that group. And I was traveling all the time. I tuned for Oscar Peterson more, probably 24 times. Chick at least a dozen times. You know, by the time I was 28, I had tuned in every major concert hall in this country. Not Chicago, but Boston certainly. All the New York halls, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Cincinnati. You know, I had been in and prepared concerts for all this. And it's, you know, here's the thing. It's not that I was a really remarkably skilled technician. It was like, okay, I was the guy. I was hired. I was in that spot. I had the right background. And I had been to Vienna, and I had enough tuning under my belt that under some pressure and some intense work, I kind of got up to the right level. But let me tell you, folks, there was a lot of learning on the job. You know, people talk about concert work and, oh, it's so refined and the concert tuning is different than anything else. No, the challenge of concert work is working under time pressure because you never have enough time. And unless it's a piano you see regularly, which was not my situation. I was traveling around seeing different pianists all the time. They were all the same model. They were all Imperial 290 Bösendorfers, which helped a lot. But they were all in much different states of condition, some not bad, some truly horrible. And work done by well-intentioned American technicians. So that was the first sort of window. And that ended with me living in New York City and the concert world sort of beginning to heat up in New York City. And at this point, there were a lot of manufacturers. Baldwin had a very active concert program. Bechstein had concert pianos. it was a very kind of vibrant place. But I had decided that I'm tired of carrying a tool case. This has been a great career, and they're going to want me to do it as long as I want to do it. And I guess I'd like to move on with my life. So I quit and I went to business school. I went to Cornell for 2 years and got an MBA. And I'm going to take a break now to see if you guys are still with me or if we're heading, off the wrong path.
We've plummeted from 82 all the way down to 5. We might as well just call it.
Well, in that case, I'm opening my beer.
No, actually, our audience has been growing rapidly.
That's one chunk. And I went to business school thinking, thank God I'm never going to have to tune a piano again. What do they say? When man plans, God laughs.
There you go. That's exactly what they say.
But I wanted to get out of the industry. I want to make some money. There wasn't venture capital then, and there wasn't Silicon Valley. This is my second year in business school is when Windows first came out. So everything I was doing up to that point was, DOS from a C prompt. If those of you who were really ancient. But here's the reality. Here's the realization I had. Is I sat in these second year MBA interviews with banks and insurance companies and some consulting firms, McKinsey and this kind of stuff. And I couldn't pretend that what they were talking about sounded interesting to me. I couldn't fake it, because if you want one of those jobs, you gotta be on your, it's a big deal going through the process of getting hired by these people. And I realized I couldn't fake it. I'd had an interesting job. None of this, the money will be better, but I'll want to jump off a pier in the first year. It was a realization, but it was a sobering one too, because it's like, okay, now what? Back in the piano industry? And that's when I went to work for Bill McCormick in Washington for a year. The Jordan Kitts Music, which was at the time the second largest Steinway dealer in the country, and I got to know Dennis Houlihan, who went on to be president of Roland, and some really good people. It was not a pleasant experience for me, but it was kind of a year retail interim. And then I got a job with Yamaha. And that job with Yamaha was not, again, on the piano side. Yamaha at that point, and I don't know how many people here are on the PTG, but the PTG has a long-term plan. And I'm not a big fan of long-term plans. And this is one of the reasons. This was 1988, and Yamaha had just had its 100th anniversary, and Yamaha had commissioned McKinsey to do a next 100-year plan for the Yamaha Globe. And so one of the reports, parts of this report back from McKinsey, is that Yamaha should have these little listening posts all over the world where they can meet with artists and show people what the latest product is and get feedback on product ideas and this kind of stuff. And Yamaha opened one in New York City. That's and right. Right across from Steinway Hall, well, kitty corner, down a block from Steinway Hall on 57th Street in Metropolitan Tower. Right, big, expensive retail, big signage retail space.
Called the Yamaha Art Center, right?
It was called the Yamaha Communication Center.
There you go.
And it was not part of Yamaha Corporation of America. It was part of YCJ, Yamaha Corporation Japan. And we didn't sell anything. We had a showroom on the bottom floor of products, and we had second floor, we had a studio for recording equipment. We had a studio for the HX1, the big organ that was the powerhouse in the organ industry those days, and a piano research area where we used to get the prototype instruments over and had some prominent artists come through and evaluate them. Now, that wasn't my job. That was run by a guy named a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful human being named William Santaella. And I don't know if many of you have ever heard or knew William, but William was one of the great characters in this industry. And he was able to bring a stream of people through. And there was no pressure because it wasn't advertising. It was just tell us what you think of this piano. And so I saw the development of up to the CF3 and then the CF3 S came through there. without going into details, then things changed. Long-term plans rarely work, and there was a lot of cultural issues, corporate cultural issues that caused the death of Yamaha Communication Center. And I was asked to move then into the new position of Artist Services Director for Yamaha. So now I went from YCJ to YCA, Yamaha Corporation of America, located in Buena Park, which is responsible for all the Yamahas you see. Leroy Edwards and that whole world is YCA. And now I was officially part of YCA, running the Artist Services program out of New York City, out of that same location in New York City. So this was during the big earthquake that had happened then. Was Andre Watts had moved from Steinway to Yamaha. And that was just as Garrick Olson, there was a famous Garrick Olson event that I can tell you about that led to Berzendorfer being put on the map. And then the one that put Yamaha on the map was Andre Watts moving from Steinway to Yamaha. And I took over right after that. And I ran that.
What year was that, Eric? What year was that?
This would have been 1989. And Chick had moved to Yamaha at this point. Maria Joao Pires, if you know that name, a wonderful, heartbreakingly beautiful pianist. Just a wonderful, wonderful pianist. She played Yamaha. Andras Schiff, he occasionally played Yamaha, but by this time he had become Sir Andras Schiff. And I'm sure I'm blanking on some of them. But I wasn't carrying a tool case at this point. And we had Japanese technicians, trained guys, very, very serious, wonderful guys who would travel around, especially with Andre. I mean, he always had, we couldn't always send the same piano, but we always sent the same technician. And that was a very good relationship. My big claim to fame was that I brought Elton John from Steinway to Yamaha. But I wasn't carrying the tool case. I was doing PR. I was not PR, but artist relations. And I was traveling all the time, again, visiting dealers and going to concerts and piano competitions and that kind of stuff.
I'm curious, I don't know if this is an answerable question. What are the politics of these artists kind of becoming an artist for a different brand?
Oh my God. Well, see, this is the thing. This period in the US, in the piano industry, from about 1980 to when I left Yamaha in 2000, my second attempt to get away from the industry. During that 20 years, it was a really vibrant time in the industry. And the politics, listen, I have great admiration for Steinway, their role in the world and their role in piano development and things. But I have had firsthand experience. They are sharp-elbowed competitors, and they have weight that they're not afraid to carry around. And I've seen it with my own two eyes. They aren't afraid to really push around big-name artists. I had one particular case where a major artist was playing with a major American symphony under a major German, but their resident conductor. And we provided the piano. It was concertos, and we provided the piano for the first of 3 performances. And she came to me at the end that evening, and said, "Look, they told me if I play Yamaha again, I'll never play here again, and I have to, I have a career." And to which I replied, "No, it's in your contract. You have to play. I don't care what happens." I'm joking about that, by the way. But this is firsthand experience. So it's a tough place, and to break through, to get somebody to make a high level to make a change but realize something else too. This was also during a different period in Steinway's history. And if you, I don't know how many of you like seeing Steinway pianos from the 80s, but that was not the high point of their production quality. and they really had a monopoly. And my experience working at Jordan Kitts for a year told me I saw brand new Steinways as if they arriving at a dealer, right out of the box. And man, they were rough. They were really rough.
I did the same thing. I was working in a warehouse for Sherman Clay, who was, by the way, the biggest Steinway dealer in the United States, or in the world at that time.
Yeah, Sherman Clay.
And I was preparing, me and a team of 3 were preparing, I don't know, a dozen Steinways a week, probably, over a 3-day period, between 9 and 12. And they were, talk about rough. Yeah. Really rough. A lot of
the concert pianos were the same. And so this is also the period of pro piano. And if any of you know that name, during this period, the Steinway concert pianos got panned a lot by major artists. And Ricardo de la Rosa saw a business niche and would go to Europe and buy Hamburg Steinway Ds, right, and bring them back to the US and obliterate the serial numbers, and he'd rent them. And he'd rent them in New York City to major artists. Now
and then LA and then other cities.
Yeah. And in San Francisco. Yeah. It was a brilliant business model because Steinway really couldn't complain that much. They're still playing a Steinway. Well, no, it's an American and German and things, but it was still a Steinway. And he had a really good business because the quality of the average concert grand owned by Steinway at that time was so bad. And that was what gave us Yamaha an opportunity, and it gave Brisendorf an opportunity. They outlived their monopoly status, and things would have been different, honestly, if they had had a higher quality period. Now, I have to say, the pianos I've seen lately have been really nice coming from
much better. Yeah.
But it's like night and day.
Fascinating.
Keep going, or
well, do we have questions from the?
I don't know if we have a ton here. Let's see what we got here.
Beloved community.
Listen, the one about compare and contrast Schimmels and other German pianos. Do you mind if I take that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely not. Please.
So here's the thing that I realized. The momentous occasion in my professional life was when I saw an Imperial Brisendorfer for the first time. And it was at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And they had a nice piano mix. I had done my very early. I want to give a shout out to Joel Jones in Madison, Wisconsin, a wonderful, wonderful guy, and my first teacher, and somebody really responsible for big parts of my career. They had good piano facilities. They had Hamburg and American Steinways, but there was something about this Imperial. There was something about this Austrian thing that I just couldn't get out of my head. It had a radical impact on me. And it's pure coincidence that a couple of years later, I was employed by the company and in Vienna watching them build this stuff. But I have always been a European piano guy. I mean, after that experience with Hamburg Steinways and with Brisendorfer, you kind of go, again, this is the 80s. You go and look at a D from that period, and it's like, man, that's really, I have to get a file to align this hammer. I have to get a file out. How does that work? I don't know. It was frustrating for me, but I have since been to most of the European manufacturers for tours. And here's if there's a takeaway, a technical takeaway for this, it's like respect the maker, because there are many, many different sounds, tonal targets by these manufacturers. There's not much to Steinway's chagrin. There's not one sound for everybody for everything. There are, and it especially comes through when you start exploring these European manufacturers, and you realize that there's a North German sound, there's a South German sound, there's a very particular Vienna sound, there's an East German sound, and there are still representatives of this style. Schimmel, for example, is a North German sound, as is Hamburg Steinway. So I would put Schimmel and Grotrian and Hamburg Steinway. They're a little bit in the same families. Very different from American Steinway. Very different from radically different from Brisendorfer. and also different from Steingraber. Steingraber is from a different part. So these guys don't all have the same agree on the same tonal standard, and that's why there are technical differences in these pianos. And you got to realize there's there's really primarily only two ways to build a rim, and I heard this from Udo Steingraber. He said there's the beach or the swimming pool, and you kind of go, okay, well, the beach, where's my video here? The beach, the waves crash up and splash and break into fragments and tiny drops, and they're kind of hammering on this hard wall. Where on a beach, it's a very gentle slope, and the waves don't really crash. They gently ebb and flow. And the beach piano rim is the standard multi-rim laminate bent rim that Steinway, but basically everybody uses. And it's usually used in conjunction with a duplex scale because you're looking for these kind of high harmonics. You're looking for this kind of whoosh sound over the top of everything. And that really hard, stiff rim is going to help accentuate that. With other pianos like Börsendorfer, which have zero tension rims, they don't want any tension in the rim. That's why they build them with these, spruce blocks. It's a much different sound. And much to my chagrin, I'm not sure I'm crazy about the idea of the Viennese, what do they call it? The VC, the Vienna concert pianos. Because the primary change in these Börsendorfers is that they add a duplex skin. And to me, that's combining apples and hamsters. But they didn't ask me my opinion on that. So, and then you have somebody like Blüthner that does kind of both. They have laminated sections, but they're only sections. Then they glue them together in blocks. Or you have somebody like August Förster, who does sort of the same thing. They sort of do the Börsendorfer kerfs on a solid plank with a bent laminated rim. So there's lots of different ways of doing it. The reason why most people have bent laminated rims is it's cheaper. It's easier and cheaper and more reliable to build a rim that way. And then the quality really depends on what you make those laminations out of. But that's why, it's not that it's superior. It's just that, for consumer level pianos, it's a much cheaper, more reliable way of making it. So that's a long answer regarding Schimmel, but it's like, this is what Dave and I were talking about earlier. If you want to be a good technician, you gotta have a tonal sense. You gotta have a tonal memory, and you have to go seek out these pianos and listen to them and try to catalog in your mind what the differences in tone are. Because what you don't want to do is try to make one piano sound like another. You don't want to. You want to enhance the character in that particular piano. You can't make a Börsendorfer sound like a Steinway. It never, ever, ever will, and vice versa, and much more subtle connections in there. So respect the maker and be aware and conscious of the fact that maker has a particular sound that they're trying to build out. And usually I find if you return everything to specs, if you do really careful work, you return everything to specs, the hammers are really nice and clean and they're really carefully fit to the string, the piano's innate sound is going to come out. You don't usually have to do a lot of tweaking. Just get it right and you'll hear what the innate sound of it.
That comment that you made about listening to different pianos and getting a sense of their sound, I'll use it as a great opportunity to just call out that our Wednesday event, what we're doing is we're reviewing one of our private lectures with Boaz Kirschenbaum on voicing. And as I said, he'll be the guest next week, but also I looked back at what the content we're going to cover in the sort of third section, minutes 60 to 90, and he talks just about that kind of thing. As a voicer, you've got to listen to different pianos. You've got to figure out, what you like. You've got to understand what other people like and how it might be different. Recordings. We've also gotten that information from great folks like Sally Phillips, the power of listening to pianos and understanding their sound much better. And humbly, I have to say, that's something I need to work on a lot more, but I appreciate that info.
I have to say something too. That's part of what I harp on when I teach. It's like, are you paying attention with full attention, not trying to listen to your critiquing comment and paying attention, but letting the critiquing comments and the oh, that's this and blah woof and comparison and contrasting, just let all that go and listen to the sound of the piano. Let it fill you, enter its world. That's the way to become a technician in the high end. To be able to make a piano sing, to maximize the efficiency of a piano, is to listen with your whole being, is to pay attention when you're doing things with your whole being. Understand that everything adds up to something incredible. And that's what I've seen is so good about you, Eric, and about high-end technicians in general, that you understand the cumulative effect of all these little things.
Well, think about what we ask a piano to do. You know, it's like, first of all, it's the backbone instrument of what we know of as Western music. I mean, yes, okay, there are orchestras of other instruments, but I mean, the fundamental canon of Western music is played on a piano. And we're asking people to translate these dots on paper into an emotionally moving event. And
yeah,
how do they do that from this collection of mechanical
weird
parts? Well,
a tuned percussion instrument? Yeah.
Well, they do it all the time, and that should, to me, I think, you got to have a pile of respect for that, and see yourself as a servant in that process between the composer and the audience, and not as somebody who's the authority. And you know, I don't know. That's my natural inclination, and David, I think along those.
So we were talking earlier. I was saying I would love you to. It's like we have a high-end artisanal piano technician captured. So in your prison of love, can you describe to us, you know, like I said, okay, so you can tune the piano and then have an hour or a little bit more maybe, but let's say an hour, and it's got some dings. And I suggested some dings, and you said, oh, let me talk about a piano that I saw yesterday. So you want to talk about that piano and go through how you did the diagnosis, and then how you're going to sequence the things that you do to get best bang for the buck.
Sure.
Real quick.
This is a relative. Go ahead.
Some questions and comments from the chat, because we got a few then. But after
awesome. Then we can do those, Ethan.
Want to do that first, or
no? What do you want? Dive in with where you were headed, but we'll go.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing, the welcome skill that I developed over, particularly during my years with Rosendorfer, is moving around and seeing pianos all the time and always kind of being under time pressure, is first, one of the advantages of working with a factory is you get to be fast. You know, it's real easy to sort of like delicately consider each and every, and you know, when you've got any kind of factory experience, it's like bang through it, man. You know, you just got to put your head down and bang through it. So I learned to bang through things at a high level, and I also learned to do, diagnose pretty quickly. And you know, the most of the problems, there's usually either a problem with dip, too little or too much. There's a problem with the hammer line, usually it's too deep and no aftertouch. There's a problem with the surface of the hammers, that they're not square or shaped or too grooved or something like that. And then often there's a problem with the damper upstop rail. If the damper upstop rail is set too low, you have this choked tone that, you know, and lots of people, oh, well, it's always sounded like that, you know. Well, you raise the damper upstop rail and give that damper a little bit of room, and all of a sudden this piano explodes to life. It's like saying, thank you.
That's right.
So always check the damper upstop rail. And I don't want to later on we can go into that if there are questions. So you got to quickly, you got to be able to take up some dip really quick and carry punch-ins with you. And, if push comes to shove, okay, maybe you don't do the low octave and the high octave, but you have to realize, okay, is this the best thing? Raising a hammer line a little bit often makes a world of difference. And if you use, I've converted to paddles, sanding paddles. I could get one, but just a piece of masonite cut out with different grits of sandpaper on it, and always a block. You always have to have the shanks, the tails on a block. But I found, man, you can make in David's words, a radical improvement in the piano by going over them with this sanding paddle. The paddle will help keep things square, so you'll have less fitting to do. And you don't have to take out all the grooves, but if you just shorten the grooves a little bit, and you take down the depth of the groove, it'll make a world of difference. And this is back to the tonal thing. It's like when you first kind of do these things, you go, well, it sounds the same to me. Well, keep doing it and keep listening, because it will be different. It doesn't jump out right away. This is part of the skill that you're developing, is this memory and this ability to discern tones. But if you learn to tune, then you know how to do it. You know what I mean? It's like your ears are working. So it's just another level of very discriminative listening. So you can make, and a good tuning, a really good tuning makes a big difference. So this piano, it's a CFX, it's a distributor CFX. It was just delivered. It's a couple years old. It had been at a school. It was just delivered to a serious pianist, a professional pianist here in town, and it was supposedly prepped before, but it really wasn't. And you look at those things, those hot buttons. I checked the dip. Well, the dip's really deep. The hammerline wasn't bad, but the drop and the let off was completely uneven, and the spring tension was completely uneven, and the hammers were grooved. So it's like, it's just the normal kind of sets of things. But don't tell me it was prepped, folks. Don't listen. We have to have standards, right? And if you say, I didn't really have time, it came from a school, it's not in bad shape, it's probably okay for a home. That's the real world, okay? Don't do that and then tell me, oh yeah, we had our best guy prep it. It's like, no, if you did, then he needs a lot more work.
Yeah,
or you didn't.
Maybe your best guy, but he's not the best guy.
So those, be able to take up dip. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be less, and it has to be even. This is the thing. It has to be even. Learn to take up dip quickly. Learn to take down dip quickly. I've got a pair of tweezers that, man, if I lost those tweezers, I wouldn't be able to do dip again. Set quick hammer line. Get the hammer line off the rails. That makes a huge difference. And practice with these paddles, doing a quick shaping of the strings, and you will, and check the upstop rail, and you will oftentimes make radical improvements in the condition of a piano. It won't be concert prepped. Also, make sure you have spring tension, some spring tension. The action doesn't work without spring tension. Nothing else will work right without spring tension. So you have to have some spring tension for things to just basically.
And would you say that spring tension influences everything, all other regulation?
Well, the reality is it all influences the tone. But yes, you can't do anything else without spring tension. But this is, back to my point. Listen, folks, taking up dip is going to change the tone, and learn to hear that. Raising the hammer on, creating a little bit of aftertouch is going to change the tone. You learn to hear that. All these things together have to end up in an improvement. So this is where, you can set things by spec, but at a certain point you got to go, okay, I have to make these things fit together now. And I'm not talking fitting together in the old Steinway sense where you had to sort of figure out how to make it work. And that's the reality of the way things were in the 80s. No, I'm talking about at a much more subtle level now. This idea of getting a piano to sing, it's not just voicing, it's not just tuning. It ain't going to sing well unless everything's in.
That's right. And regulation is voicing, straightening and burning shanks, and burning in hammers is regulation. Everything is voicing. Everything is voicing. Everything changes the tone.
Yeah.
And the more you can maximize the tone, both the fundamental and the sustain of it, you're making the piano sing,
Right.
maximizing the efficiency. And
Should we cut into some questions and comments?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, this is a great. This is like a rapid fire episode. Everything we're gonna have some time for questions and stuff. Not to delve too deep into compliments, but James Kessler sent a message. He said that you personally got him started in the industry 8 years ago when he tuned your piano. So this is a very special event for him. So welcome to James.
Hey, James.
Kevin Clem, maybe briefly, what was it like tuning for Oscar Peterson, Chick Corea? Anything to share there? And can you?
Yeah, it was okay. It wasn't anything special. Here's the thing. I tuned for Oscar, so that means I heard Joe Pass, and that means I heard Niels Henning Ørsted Pedersen, and guess who else I heard on a number of occasions? Ella Fitzgerald, because she and Oscar were really good friends and played a lot together. And so, it was like, it was an embarrassment of riches. I mean, I heard pianists, oh my God. I mean, there were classical pianists, Sergio Fiorentino and Dubravka Tomšič, and some of these names that aren't really known, that are just, the impact is burned into you. So it was great. I mean, but listen, I'm still a piano technician. So you tune the piano and you go out in the hall and you're sitting there and you're cringing because you're just sure the first note he touches is going to be out of tune. It doesn't matter who it is. You're sitting there going, and then, it takes a couple of minutes before you kind of go, well, that's not so bad, Oh, okay. But it's a stressful thing.
Thanks for that. I'll move on, but that's great to hear. That's fascinating. Next we have, let's see here, Judy. How do you tune the extra notes in a Bosendorfer?
Great question.
Yeah. I'm sure it comes up all the time for everybody. Listen, I play things very safe, all right? And there's lots of different coincidental harmonics you can listen to. But I want it to sound reasonable, and I want it to sound chromatically correct. And so I do basically loud octaves down into that low bass, and I take it low, and then I bring it up to just the point where I'm thinking, that's okay. What happens a lot of times, people start listening to harmonics, and that's a very, very, very messy harmonic area down there. And they start listening to the wrong ones, and they go, well, it's not quite, bang. And you're dead, because those are expensive strings, and they're really hard to splice. I don't care what your splicing skills are. So always be conservative, don't try to get them correct. They're not adding pure harmonic tone. They're adding kind of this wash, and then it's the additional soundboard space. It's the real value. If you can make them sound good chromatically, if it sounds like it's a chromatic process all the way going down in the bass, you're fine. If you play them as octaves, and when they're out of tune, they'll have a really noticeable wow, 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 kind of almost like a helicopter. And if you can get rid of that, then you're fine. Don't break them.
Good.
That's great. Next one's a compare and contrast question. I don't think you covered this. Regarding Seiler, the same question as before, compare and contrast Seiler with other German pianos and in this dynamic.
Well, again, they all have their characteristics. And German piano building, there's a certain standard in German piano building, and all these companies meet this standard. So they're all well designed, well built pianos. There's a particular. I would kind of put Seiler in the North German kind of tonal characteristic. But I worked with Feuerich for a while, and it's really interesting. If you see an old Feuerich piano, they were originally from Leipzig, and there's a particular East German sound. Leipzig is Blüthner territory, and a little bit further east is where you get August Förster and things. And Blüthner is the strangest to me. I mean, beautiful, but very unique take on piano tone. So Zeiler to me is kind of in the North German kind of tonal characteristic. But if you see some of these old Feuerich pianos, they migrated west after the war to around Frankfurt, and they were building. German piano building for a long time was not fussy. It was very high level. It was beautiful craftsmanship, and they were workaday utility pianos. And when you come across some of these older ones, they're now everything's gotten fussy and expensive, and gold-plated Fazioli hardware and this kind of stuff. But there was a different. The German piano tradition stands for something, and Zeiler is certainly a member of that club.
Great. Can I move on? Any other interjections?
Just there's so many tier one or very close to it German pianos that are just amazing. I work on Steingravers, I work on Grotrians, and both of those pianos, the new for Steinway for Steingraber for a long time, but for Grotrian, the new iteration of these Grotrian pianos are just stunningly beautiful, in my opinion.
Steingraber pianos they're just marvels of the world. And I'll tell you, the other one is Zauder, man.
Zauder. The Zauder 225 is one of the greatest pianos.
God, what a piano, It's like, I don't know. It's exciting. It's exciting. I see a couple of these. There's a question about hammers, line, and grooves and things. And this is another area where David and I agree. It's like grooves on a hammer are not necessarily a bad thing. And this is one of the other, if you want to be good, you have to understand it's not just you thinking, oh, I like this tone. It's like, okay, what do professional pianists like? And if you come to a piano, most of the pianos you come to, right, have 3 grooves. And it means nobody's ever touched the shift pedal. Maybe there'll be 4 grooves, which show they kind of treat it binary, it's either on or off. But if you come to a piano that's clearly been played, but there are no grooves, it's kind of uniformly flat across the top, let me tell you, you've come to a very serious pianist, because they're utilizing the shift pedal, not as a soft pedal, but as a color pedal. And you watch them play, their left foot is going to be on that pedal all the time. And they're always making little micro adjustments. And this, if you want to work with high-end pianists, think of it as a color pedal, not a soft pedal or a shift pedal. And I've accepted it, that with grooves, you give the player additional potential surfaces to use for tone production combined with the use of the shift pedal. Now, first, do no harm. So, they can't be too deep, but it's not necessarily a good thing to file all the grooves off. Even when I have time, I'm not under pressure or something, I'm going to leave just the faint whisper, if I can, of grooves, because it's an important tone production area for some people. Not that many, but some of them.
It is, actually. And if you voice the grooves right, they're very easy to control. And many players play off the grooves. And I really appreciate the grooves being there. But they can't be longer than 2 or 3 millimeters, I don't think. And it can't be deeper than like a 0.5 millimeter.
Shortening the grooves makes a huge difference.
Huge difference. Huge.
The other thing I want to mention is a jack position. This is one area where David and I differ. I think, David, don't you set jack position by taste? Isn't it? Oh no, by sound. That's what.
I licked the Spoonfeld, and
I don't do it that way, but I found I do it by sound, by that sound.
I like to eliminate that. And sometimes if the jack is a teeny bit, like an eighth of a turn forward, that's okay with me. I don't perceive it affecting anything.
I like a gauge for jack, and I now use that knuckle jack or nuck jack or that little device. And I'll tell you, you'll be amazed at how often you'll find pianos where the jacks are way too far back.
Oh,
and
way.
That's a little bit more of a time-consuming process. So you've got to be careful taking that on under time pressure.
That's right. And they're not only way far back, but they're making that noise that I hate.
Right. And just setting jacks in a good position makes a world of difference in the touch. But you have to be careful. You can't do it quick because it can't cheat, right? You have to go back over and over and over it.
That's right.
And make sure that it doesn't cheat. But that's even on relatively new pianos, I've seen jacks way back, and it makes such a difference to moving forward.
I'm going to touch the next question here. Great info.
Oh, Joe's on. A shout out to my buddy Joe Malecki. Awesome. Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Next question.
We're at less than 10 minutes out, but we've got crammed a lot into the first 50 minutes, so we should be good here. Next comment here, Rick Overton, previous guest. As a dealer for Steingraber and Grotrian and Estonia, he finds there is a specific sound difference and touch difference in each one. They really have their own personality. Mark Campbell says, do we use different techniques to match the maker's voice in the piano, or do we use the same technique and let the maker's choices make the difference?
Repeat that one more time.
Basically, do you sort of treat a piano as its make and model, or do you treat all pianos very similarly and let the make and model's own unique nuances come out from the way that you're sort of universally treating them all?
Good question.
Oh, that is a good question. I got to think about that. I mean, I hate to be squirrely about it, but it's honestly a little bit of both. Some pianos I know really well. The Brisbane-Over 225 I know really well, and so I know the steps and processes and things that will pretty much make that thing sound pretty good. Other pianos I'm not so familiar with, and I may not have the specific specs with me, and so I try to put things generically in place and see what comes out. Again, if you don't always get time to do this, right? And so sometimes you have to make short-term, quick decisions like dip and aftertouch and this kind of stuff. But if you've got time, the pianos speak to you. I hate to sound too woo, but they'll tell you if you're listening that you clean up all the other junk, and this includes easing keys and polishing balance rail pins, and it's all related, folks. It's all related. And if you want this piano, if you want this Zyler, or if you 7-footer, if you want this Zauter 224 or 227 or something, if you want it to sound like God intended it, you got to go through the steps, and then I find it's usually just evening stuff off. And there might be a balance problem, and it doesn't necessarily it won't necessarily be trivial. You may have to juice and bring some stuff up, or to balance it out. But the piano will, you give it room and prove that you're a listener. Prove that you can listen. The piano will tell you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Before we wrap this up, can you talk about that final step of evening out the attack mode with a chopstick voicing tool?
Yeah, but Carl Lieberman standing there with his arms folded, and I'm really intimidated. And so, I don't know. I can't.
He listened up, so you're good to go, pal.
I hardly ever use a chopstick.
So don't take it too seriously.
To be honest, I mean, in an emergency, but
whatever the thing is, that whatever the protocol or tool you use to get the attack of every note to sound the same.
The hammer has to be fit to the string with excruciating pain and frustration. You know, this is the thing. If you want to be good, folks, there's no secret. There's not many secrets. And you have to do the work. And that means you have to go over things a couple times. You can't just go over it once. You have to go over things a couple times to make sure they're right and consistent and even. And that's particularly true with fitting the hammer to the strings, man. You got to make yourself crazy just getting it to all mute at the same time.
And
if you do anything less than that, you're going to fail.
Do you use a hook, or do you use
a hook? I use a hook in my fingernail, and a pencil, and a very sharp pencil. I learned this in Vienna. A very sharp pencil, and I put a tiny pencil mark on the top of the hammer under the strings that mute. And so I can go through a whole set, and then I pull the action out in my lap, and I see these old pencil marks. And all I have to do is file away the pencil.
Right, the pencil mark. Wow.
Yeah. And then it
Well,
may not be
fabulous,
enough, but you know, you do that a couple times, and you'll be in pretty good shape. And then that's the biggest one. The other one, you know, the other two things that I do on a regular basis is I have a tool with 2 rows of, it came from Jim Coleman, I think, 2 rows of 8 needles, maybe, very, very, very short, like sugar coating, only multiple needles, kind of 2 rows. And I find that if early in the process, in the prep process, if I go through and with this very short needle tool, go right across the strike point, I have to evaluate it first, obviously, but if I go right across the strike point, then by the time I'm done tuning, you know, it'll have an immediate impact. But it a lot of times it just breaks up the tensions in that top layer of fiber, so that it gives you a sweet sound, you know, at mezzo forte, and a sweet sound.
Especially at low volume.
Right. And the power is still there because you haven't
destroyed the string cut.
And then I use there's a sandpaper that I use that, you know, it's vinyl, and it doesn't I'm told they use it for polishing jet engine canopies. It has no grit that I can feel. And I go over the hammers with that, and I find that it has very little impact, but there's something that gives a nice little even warmth to the tone.
You never quit learning about voicing.
No, that's what's so awesome about this business.
Those are 2 fabulous techniques, and please expect some questions on what kind of, you know, gritless sandpaper. And
the reason I do that voicing first is by the time I'm done tuning a couple times and all the other stuff, it's been settled in and packed in and that kind of stuff, and then I can voice, then I can really even things out. But
wow.
You do it early in the process, and it can have a big impact.
Okay.
Wow, this has been jam-packed. Pretty awesome.
Really?
We're about a minute and a half out from when we log off here. I put some links in the chat. Pooja, can you share our slide that calls out the people in the behind the scenes? We put the links in the chat here. Feedback forums, the first one I added there. The Wednesday voicing event, if you want to join us and review Boaz's lecture on voicing, where he explicitly talks about some of the things we mentioned here today, listening to different piano sounds. The link's there. And also, if you want to pre-register for next week's radio hour for free, that link is there. And then I'll just go over, let's get rid of you had it before. There you go.
Yeah. Yay, team.
Yeah,
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
We got Tal, Ian, Pat, Daniel, Sarah, and actually even more folks joining our team, helping us out behind the scenes. So thank you very much to them. We really appreciate what they're up to. And you can take that slide down, and we'll wrap it up here.
Can I just mention one thing before we close? Because there's one question that I wanted to address.
Oh, yeah, sure. Let's go for it.
Joe, my buddy Joe down in Charleston asked about tapping bridge pins and setting strings and this kind of stuff. I don't do that as a wholesale activity. There's some people that the first thing I do is go through and tap all the bridges and do this and do that, and I don't do that. One, it doesn't don't tap strings on bridges if they don't need it. And a lot of times it changes things. It can change things in a very unexpected way. So I'll use all those tools if I'm looking for a buzz or looking for a problem or something, but I'm not a big fan of just sort of wholesale, always tapping bridge pins and always doing that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's all.
Oh,
Awesome.
good. An awesome alternative viewpoint from a lot of people.
This was fun, you guys. I really appreciate it. Ethan, David, you guys are doing great work here. I really appreciate being invited, but I also really appreciate everything you've done up to this point. It's important for us to get together this way and to share these ideas and to do it, utilizing modern common technology. So my hat's off. Really great job.
No question. And a couple of your, tips were just like priceless, man. So thank you so much.
I'll put a price.
Thank you so much for the whole hour just flew by. And so thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right. Well, I'll log us off.
Loyal hordes. It's beautiful to see you all. Thank you so much. Couldn't do this without all you guys that
Definitely.
attend all the time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Have a beautiful weekend. Get off the grid. Treat yourself like the king and queen you are. Okay? Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. Remember that you can catch us live online every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
That's right. Go to pianotechradio.com to register so you can interact live and ask questions of our guests.
See you next week.